Welcome to Let's Take a Walk with Charlie Feld, brought to you by the Feld Group Institute. Today, Charlie sits down with Mike Childress, an affiliate of the Feld Group Institute and a seasoned IT leader. As Chief Technology Officer, Mike has played a pivotal role in designing and deploying IT solutions across various sectors, most recently in transportation. In this episode, Charlie and Mike explore the value of building strong connections with teams by walking the halls and emphasize the importance of alignment, trust, and approachability in today's hybrid work environment. We're glad you're here. Now let's turn it over to Charlie.
Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about managing by walking around. And I know the things are very different right now than they were when I first got started. But when I started, I had kind of a unique circumstance. I was an IBM systems engineer and working at Frito-Lay, and I didn't have an office. And I lived in the hall. I became a hall rat. And just in that process, I knew everybody. I knew the condition of every project. I knew who was performing, who wasn't performing. I had just fingertip touch with everything going on. Then 10 years in 1981, they offered me the job as CIO. And with the job came a beautiful office, an executive assistant, my own conference room, and I started hanging out there. And I realized about 3 or 4 months in that that was very comfortable for me, but I didn't know what was going on anymore. I lost my feel for the projects, for the people, for everything about what kind of got me to be a player at Frito-Lay. And I said, I'm not going to sit in my office anymore. I'm going to block out 4 or 5 hours a day where I'm going to go to where the work is and where the action is and go back to the roots of the way I thought about things. And, I want to kind of go through why that's important today, to not see the world through staffs and bee watchers and people that are going to report on projects, but to see it through the eyes of the people that it's happening to and with. And I'd like to introduce somebody that's been with me for 30 years or so, that went from being a developer when I first met him to being a CIO, and he's had every role in so many different companies with me over the years, and that's Mike Childress. So, Mike, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast and to really kind of get your thoughts, starting from when you and I first met. Do you remember where we met?
Yeah, definitely. I remember at Burlington Northern, I had just come over and joined the team at Burlington Northern. And it was actually my very first day on the job. Charlie came in and addressed all the new hires that had joined the department and wasted no time engaging, talking about here's what we're doing as a company, here's the strategy, here's where we can help the company succeed, and just lay the groundwork of aligning everybody to go forward. And over the course of the next few years, got plenty of opportunity. And probably one of the more meaningful engagements, Charlie, we had is, at one point I came in and told you, hey, I'm going to go take another job. I'm going to go to Delta Airlines out in Atlanta. And you stopped everything you were doing and you talked to me and you said, okay, let's have the conversation. Are you running away from something or are you running to something? And I told you, hey, we're looking to have an adventure, move a couple of states over, do some stuff. And you sat down and walked me through all the different aspects of jobs. And then you told me, hey, if it doesn't work out, you always have a place. So give me a call back if it doesn't work out. And sure enough, I mean, it wasn't a year later, I saw you walking across the campus at Delta Airlines, and I knew great things were about to happen there too. So it was a meaningful engagement. And as a person that I had moved up the developer ranks at Burlington Northern, but the fact that you would take that time and pull me in your office and have that level of conversation was very meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really helpful to me when we got to Delta Airlines, because when we finished with Burlington Northern, Delta Airlines brought me in, and I had a friend in the party. You were a director by then, I believe.
Yeah.
And you made great progress over those years. And so we began the engagement again, but I was still doing the walk in the halls and coming to the meetings and going to your release meetings. Mike was doing the gate and boarding project, which was the beachhead for the kickoff of the transformation of Delta Airlines. And he would have daily stand-ups, and I knew when they were, and I'd show up at them and just sit in the back and listen to what was happening. That gave me a good feel for the projects and the complexity, and we were able to solve problems while they were happening. If they needed a
Hmm.
signature for, a few more people, or they needed some, clearance to go to one of the airports, we were able to do it in the meeting. But I didn't go to every one of them, but I went to enough of them. And one of the things that I learned and felt was that when I worked for IBM, I worked for a branch manager named Bill Mason, and Bill would actually come to the accounts from time to time and sit through some of the account meetings. And my account was PepsiCo at the time up in New York. And when the meeting was over, Bill would take me for a walk down the hall or a cup of coffee and tell me the stuff I did well and the stuff I did wrong. And that had a great impact on me. And I carried that forward. So, I think that Mike and I had more than one or two walks down the hallway after the meetings because, Mike is, for people that know Mike, he's pretty intense and knows where the goal line is, but every once in a while, kind of gets ahead of the blockers a little bit. So, Mike, you might review, kind of talk about the idea of kind of a walk after a meeting.
Yeah. It's actually something I've picked up also, Charlie. It's, observing that kind of coaching and teaching and having it done is definitely an influence. I remember, several times we would, so you tell me after a meeting, hey, let's take a walk. And it could be good. Hey, this went great. This went great. But there's also those learning moments of, maybe it was a release meeting we were in or something. We'd have, a bunch of people in the room. You'd say, hey, the team's pretty tired right now. Let them catch their breath. Or, that was pretty intense. Let's make sure we follow back up with them, make sure everybody's okay. Or even one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, hey, we're going to go into this, we're going to go into a series of tough meetings uh, with some pretty senior people across different businesses. And I never forget one of your best pieces of advice where I want you to sit on your thumbs. That's like, sit on my thumbs. He goes, yep, sit on your thumbs because it's going to do two things. He said, you like to talk with your hands sometimes, and it's going to force you to listen better. And sure enough, sitting on my thumbs. And who would have thought? I still remember that to this day. It was great. But yeah, those walks, great
Yeah.
coaching moments, great teaching moments. And you got to do the good and the bad. Take a walk around the block can't always be a bad thing, right?
Mhm.
It's got to be good things too. So it's very important to have those moments with team members where you can, and it could be a virtual walk. It doesn't have to be a literal one, but I will tell you the literal walks around the building to clear your head and get outside and have a dialogue. Those are meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the once a year appraisal is not helpful to develop leaders, but being in the moment is important.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I've had, because I haven't been an active CIO for 15 years now, and a lot has changed, and you have. You're uh, coming off being a CIO in a fairly intense business at a fairly intense time, which included COVID, and there is no walk in the hall anymore. The hall doesn't exist. I can't picture how difficult it is to manage when people are in different buildings, everything's virtual, leaders are changing all the time, the chaos. So how have you substituted the physical walk with the more virtual world that you've been leading in over the last
Yeah.
5 or 6 years?
It definitely poses a bigger leadership challenge. Um, there are some great tools out there that the development and operations teams use. I mean, the whole Atlassian suite, Jira, Slack. I mean, there's all sorts of great tools we can use. And things like Jira, where you can track work items and everything else. Those are fantastic, but they don't replace engaging with the team that's, you know, fighting the fight and getting the work done and doing the stuff. They're great tracking tools, and it's a piece of information, but you have to engage the human still. And one of the things, one of the things I found helpful is setting up virtual office hours, right? Here's the time I'm going to be available. You got to say, you want to talk, you want to do something, one-on-ones. You've got to be diligent with your one-on-one time, even if it's virtual and not face to face. You've got to set time aside to just talk to the person. And it doesn't have to all be about business. You got to catch up with the people. How's the family doing? What's ever going on in your life? Because those things impact, as we all know. You got to have some random one-on-one chats. I mean, the way I facilitated that is, everybody knew they could text me or chat me whenever they wanted to. And if I couldn't talk, I would tell them, hey, I can't talk right now. I'll catch up with you later. And I did have to give away my, personal cell phone also. This is my personal cell phone number. And you might get nervous about that, thinking, oh, everybody's going to have it. Well, look, they're going to get it if they want it anyway. And you'd be surprised. A lot of people are very respectful if they know they have your cell phone and they can contact you if they've got a problem or something's going on. They're very respectful of that, and they won't abuse it. But it does open up more communication because you've trusted them with that. And then you've got the standard, skip level meetings, which are good. And then something that I found very helpful is kind of a walk and talk, right? I mean, even if the person is not in the same city, hop on the cell phone with them and call them up and say, hey, I'm taking a walk around the block to clear my head, and I was thinking of you. How you doing?
Nice.
What's going on? Right. And it just helps foster more communication, more touch points. Everything doesn't have to be about the last intense meeting or decision or project. You got to stay connected. And I do think it matters, Charlie. And the things I've observed over the years as I kind of roll this forward is you've got to create alignment to the vision and strategy. And if you're not meeting with people and making sure everybody's aligned, I think it was you that told me, empowerment is great, but empowerment without alignment is chaos.
Yep.
And we don't want chaos, right? So make sure that, you spend that time to create that alignment. And it's not always done in a meeting. Sometimes it's done one-on-one. The second thing is it creates contextual understanding. Once you get the alignment, any decisions that you make or actions that you take or emails that come out creates a level of everybody can kind of put it into context of what's going on, it's helpful for people, which then creates a level of trust. You told them this is what's happening, this is what's going on. They can trust that this is right. And if you need to deviate, you can talk to them about that and they would understand. And I think all those things really help, which gets you to the last part, which is real-time problem solving. I think you used to call it, you got to be in the fight with the team, right? You got to be willing to dive in, roll up your sleeves and get to it. Which quite honestly means you can't be sitting in an office looking at spreadsheets, looking at dashboards all the time. You've got to go out and get with the team members. That's where you're going to find out. You can't wait 2 or 3 weeks for things to bubble through a status report. You got to get out and mix it up.
Yep.
Now you can't be everywhere all the time. So don't get me wrong. You can't know everything going on everywhere at all times. Some places are just too big. So you got to trust on some of those things, but you've got to deviate your one-on-ones and kind of get with different people along the way.
Yeah, speaking of alignment, let's go to the other side, not to your staff or your direct reports, but to your peers on the executive team, right? I mean, they're scattered. They're constantly changing. There's so much change going on. How do you, in a virtual world, stay connected to a more fluid executive team? Is that also require you getting time with them? And how do you do that these days?
It's work. You can't just walk down the hall and talk to them anymore. That was nice when we could do that. And actually, the last company I was just come off of, we had some executives in the office. That was nice. Spent a lot of time walking up and down the hall, talking to them, bounce it into their office, they into mine. But the ones that are in more remote locations, right, across the globe, you've got to go make that effort. And some of the things we did is we would set up an operations and technology and project management office discussion where we would have a call and we would talk. And there would not be a fixed agenda. It's kind of a catch up. This is what's going on this week. These are the things that are burning platform. This is what I kind of hear is going on. What are you hearing? Do you need some help from me? Do I need some help from you? Kind of discussion. Those help a lot. And I will tell you, there's also a benefit from just the peer group getting around without the bosses, right? Getting the peer group together virtually or in person, if you've got a lot of people local, creating that camaraderie and everything is a big idea.
A big part of what we invested in over the years has been developing our people, developing our leadership, and that seems to be shrinking in terms of the willingness to invest or the time to invest. But I don't know how you develop next generation leaders if you don't think about it and have a way of implementing it in a world that is so fast paced with so much churn going on. Have you thought about that?
Yeah. So my thoughts on that are the word systemic. We all know that sending somebody to a class and not having them come back and exercise and use that knowledge is almost a wasted set of time and money on everybody's part. Therefore, if a company or a department is not systemically thinking through, how do I work this training so that the material that's coming through it, we are all using in the department and we are all moving forward as a group? I mean, I can send a technologist to a set of training, they never use it, it's a waste. If I send a department through, pick your favorite topic of the day, we're going to send the department through a set of AI training, and then we're all using AI, we'll get much bigger bang for the buck because we have got the entire mass and momentum moving that way. So I think that we try these rifle shots of training sometime instead of thinking about we need to move mass through it. We need to create momentum for the entire department because we believe in a way we're doing it. Some of the best training I've seen was at FedEx and some of the stuff they did there, training people, both leadership and technology wise, because it had mass, it had purpose, it had mass, it had longevity, and it could take root and take hold.
Yep. What about developing leaders and giving them opportunities to move around and see different things? Are you able to do that in this era?
You can. You find that finding those opportunities to move them around, I think everybody that's been in a leadership position will understand they don't always happen naturally. You've got to go make them. And that requires, once again, work. You've got to sit down and think it through. Somebody needs operational experience. Well, how do you create that? Somebody needs experience in a different business unit. How do you create that? You've got to be willing to work at it. It's not naturally going to happen. Don't get me wrong, it will every now and then. You'll find some of those nice spots, but you've got to go work at it. But people are generally willing to go pick up some new experiences and work at things.
Yeah, I think that that's important for a lot of reasons because I think people leave companies when they feel like it's just another year of doing the same thing. But also, I don't know how you get to be a senior executive unless you've had opportunities to see a wider variety of functions and roles. Like if you grew up only in systems development, and never had a role in a data center or never had a role in systems engineering, how do you get to be somebody that's over all of it?
Yeah.
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 So,
Back to that perspective word. You got to have enough perspective, which comes through experience.
yeah. Well, Mike, this has been great. I just really, am interested, and I feel the pain of modern day managers. And, I don't want to just talk about the good old days, because I think IT, for instance, is just getting interesting right now, right after 60 years. But the problems and the issues are so different now, and they've come on so fast, that I would encourage people to come up with systemic ways of doing the old thing the new way, because the old thing still matters. People, their commitment to you requires you have a commitment to them. And, people don't develop without feedback. People don't develop without investment and moving them around to different functions. So I appreciate your time, and look forward to continuing to watch how this plays out.
Thank you, Charlie. Always a pleasure.